ever feel like you're chasing a moving target, or like being good enough always feels like it's just out of reach? I get it. Growing up with a father who was an addict, losing a parent at a young age, and battling obsessive compulsive disorder throughout my life has taught me much about shame, guilt, and always trying to be good enough. But what if being good enough is a myth? What if your worth is not something to chase or try to measure up to? This is the Enough Effect podcast, a space to rewrite the narrative, share stories, and discover the power of being you exactly as you are. Hi, I'm Abby Tabilos. I'm your host of the Enough Effect, and this is episode 7. So that's crazy. We're almost at 2 months of the Enough Effect. I can't believe it. And this one is so fun to talk about. It's a very real component of mental health. I obviously think it's very important to bring up and to speak about. And it's something I've personally talked with my therapist about a lot of times. And my friends all seem to relate to the same struggle. And that is when you have a mental health condition or struggle with your mental health as a woman, there are definitely certain times of the month that are more difficult for you. And I know for me with my OCD, during the luteal phase of my cycle or menstrual phase of my cycle, my OCD acts up way more, and I'm way more susceptible to getting sucked back into the OCD cycle and my intrusive thoughts. And I've gotten very upset about it in the past. I remember telling my therapist at one point, this is not fair. What do I do? Because I can't do this every month. I'm on a roller coaster. And I want to share with you what I learned about a coping strategy for when your mental health conditions flare up during certain times of the month. And don't click off this video if you are someone listening that does not have a period, because it's also applicable for just living life with a level mind. It's just a very helpful thing that I've learned. My therapist taught me that there are 3 different minds, in quotation marks, that we operate in at any given time as human beings. And for those who are interested, this concept is part of Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, or DBT. And I'm going to explain each of those different minds, if you will, that we operate in. And the first one is the rational mind. And so the good thing about this is that a lot of these are a little bit self-explanatory. Obviously, the rational mind is somebody who's very logical based. So I like to think of this as if like I'm talking to my husband, or honestly most male figures in my life, about an emotional issue. They're only seeing the facts. They're not seeing the underlying emotions of a particular situation. It's facts, numbers, logical reasoning for everything. It's not very emotional based. And then there's the complete other side of the spectrum, and that is the emotional mind. So that is like me in my luteal phase, where my emotions are driving everything. Everything is about my anxiety or whatever emotion I'm feeling, and I'm not really tapping into the facts or the logic. It's just how I feel acting on that. So obviously these are 2 like very opposite ends of the spectrum. And just like how we don't want to have black or white thinking, we want to have a gray area. We don't want to spend all of our time in rational or emotional mind. It's okay to tap in there a little bit, but life is best and you're at your healthiest, and the people around you are also probably at their healthiest when you're operating in what is called wise mind. I love that it's called wise mind. It's so easy to remember. I've shared about this on my TikTok before, like a year ago. And wise mind is, again, it's like a Venn diagram. You have rational mind, emotional mind, and then wise mind is the overlapping part. And that is where you are using logic and facts and reasoning and your emotion and honoring your emotional experiences to be mindful and present and make decisions based off of both and equally considering both. And that is how you can get in a space to handle your mental health flare-ups during specific times of your cycle, or just a mental health flare-up in general, just to keep a level head. I like to set reminders on my phone, especially during that time of the month. I literally will have my phone ping me, like, remember wise mind, or I have like a wallpaper that makes me think about wise mind. And it's just about just that reminder of like, okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath. Am I completely focused on my emotional reasoning? Can somebody help me maybe see the logic or the facts, and then honor and validate my emotions, and then pick a path forward? And I think that that's especially helpful for someone dealing with anxiety or intrusive thoughts. When you are in emotional mind and your anxiety spikes, it's like panic mode. Try and figure out how to get rid of it. Your whole life is focused around your anxiety and what you can do to get out of there. Whereas if you can move into wise mind, you can start to see equally the fact that nothing is permanent, all things pass, life ebbs and flows, and I'm gonna be okay, even though this is hard, and I'm validating that this is hard. It's a balance, and it's a good headspace to be in. Of course, I know it's a lot easier said than done to just be like, be in wise mind. It takes a lot of practice, but for me, like I said, using those phone reminders, all I really do to get into wise mind is I take a moment to myself, I take a deep breath, and then I just ask myself, what are the facts about the situation that I am not seeing right now because I'm thinking about my emotions? Or sometimes my husband, like I said, is very good at factual reasoning and logic. So I will ask him, hey, like, how do you see this situation? And then I have to force myself to be open. Because sometimes when we're in emotional mind or when we are in rational mind, we're very stubborn and stuck in our ways. So you have to be open and willing to see another perspective, but just training yourself to be back to the present moment. I know some people who are into meditation use like the ding sound to remind them to be present. There's so many different things that you can do, and you can find out what works for you, but just having some sort of reminder to come back to the present. This time of the month is hard, but here are the facts. I'm validating that this is hard, but this is temporary, or I'm not gonna act on the fact that I'm anxious right now. I'm just gonna be, because it's gonna go away eventually. I don't know when, but that's okay. I've gotten through every luteal phase before. And those are the facts that we can be reminded of. But again, don't forget to validate your emotions at the same time. And before I go, I do want to share one more tip for how you can spend more time in wise mind. I actually just came up with this last week because I've been working really hard on trying to be in wise mind more often. And I came up with what I call the 15-minute rule for myself. And I literally just have the number 15 that I use as a reminder on my phone and my devices. And what I do when I see that 15 is I say, if I feel like I need to do an action, if I need to say something to someone or act upon my anxiety or go have like a mental breakdown, I have to wait 15 minutes before I do anything. And that 15 minutes is usually more than enough time for me to be like capable and willing and able to get back into the wise mind space. That keeps me from acting out, doing anything rash, and helps me kind of be present in a healthy way. So I would love to hear your experiences. If you decide to try out the 15-minute rule, or what ideas you have for reminding yourself to stay in wise mind, or experiences that you have regarding that, the more the merrier. I love all the tips and tricks, but this has been something, out of everything I've learned in therapy, this has really stuck out to me. So this is your reminder to practice spending as much time in wise mind as you can, and be patient with yourself in the process. No one's perfect. No one can be in wise mind all the time, but it's just a great mindset to have. And as always, I believe in you, and you can do anything. I can't wait to hear how trying out wise mind goes. I will talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Enough Effect podcast. If you enjoyed listening, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment your favorite thing from today's episode. Plus, don't forget to hit up my social media at abstabs, ABSTABBS, on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook for daily inspirational content to remind you that you can live a life built upon the resounding belief that being good enough was never an endeavor worth pursuing. Lastly, check out my show notes for any resources mentioned in this episode, and my website, where you can find a list of all the ways I would love to work with you. See you next week, and don't forget that you are and always have been more than enough.